And now it's recording, so how do we get rid of that? Oh, okay. There you go. Thanks, Nicole. Welcome, everybody. I'm Patty Reese, and welcome to our Zoom class. Excuse our tech issues. We're just learning how to make sure these recordings are recorded properly. So we are very excited to have you all on our call. And I've muted everybody. We will unmute you after Christina's presentation, so you can ask questions, and we'll have a little open discussion then. So I'm very excited. It is April 25th, 2018, and I'm very delighted to introduce Christina Veselak. She is one of my favorite people, one of my mentors. Christina Veselak is one of the founders of the Alliance. So we're very excited to have her here. She's a psychotherapist out of Colorado. She's a mental health nutritionist. She is the founder of the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition. And I believe she's one of the top people in nutritional therapies for the brain with addiction and mental health. Anyway, Christina Veselak, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm going to let you take it away now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Patty. And any of you may unmute yourselves at any time if you have any questions. So what I'm going to talk about today, and Patty, let me know, I'm guessing give me maybe 40 minutes.
Yes.
And let me know when I'm getting up to the near of the end of my 40 minutes.
Okay.
And then we'll open it to discussion other than just questions. So what I want to talk about today is the role of cofactors in the conversion of amino acids to neurotransmitters. Much of the focus of the work of the Alliance, as well as the teaching through the Academy, is about how we can powerfully use amino acid therapy to rebuild and balance neurotransmitter function. And as we do that, we can decrease cravings and relapse to addictive behaviors, and we can also frequently, very powerfully, and within 20 minutes, decrease anxiety, obsessiveness, anger, depression, fatigue, etc. But what we don't spend very much time talking about is the other nutrients and molecules required to make this conversion. And so today's presentation is going to be on briefly the different vitamins and minerals we need for this conversion. And then I'm going to spend much more time on two molecules, one called SAMe and the other called tetrahydrobiopterin, or BH4. Because these are crucial cofactors in the conversion process that we don't talk very much about. So here goes. I want us to start just by looking at this little chart, which is looking at the conversion of one amino acid into several neurotransmitters. Now we know that we have more than one neurotransmitter system, but this is a very good introduction to the topic. So if you look at the amino acid L-tyrosine, it requires an enzyme, tyrosine hydroxylase, to convert to the amino acid L-dopa, which then turns into dopamine. But if you see in blue on the slide, tetrahydrobiopterin, otherwise known as BH4, is required for this enzyme to work. And these are mediated then through particular genes. But for tyrosine to convert into dopa, we need BH4. Okay? And then if you look at the conversion of norepinephrine into epinephrine, we require S-adenosylhomocysteine, otherwise known as SAMe. It is required. These molecules are required for other conversions in all of the neurotransmitter pathways as well. But I just wanted you to see this as an example. What this means is if there is not enough BH4, tyrosine cannot efficiently convert into DOPA. And if there is not enough SAMe, norepinephrine cannot effectively convert into epinephrine. And we'll be looking at this in more detail down the road, because serotonin cannot effectively convert into melatonin either. Oh dear, let's see if we can move some things around here. All right. But to look at the different conversions here, and I don't think we can see this top one. Okay, dietary protein. We all know about dietary protein. Okay. So in terms of the vitamin and mineral cofactors we require, for dietary protein to be digested into the its constituent amino acids, which include L-phenylalanine, we require vitamin B6 and zinc. Well, if somebody has the genetic or non-genetic disorder pyroluria, which we'll be talking about down the road, you don't have enough B6 or zinc to even adequately digest protein. So it can, the whole process can start being derailed at the dietary protein digestion place. And then, as you see, to convert L-phenylalanine into tyrosine requires folic acid, magnesium, manganese, iron, copper, zinc, and vitamin C. A whole ream of nutrients are required here. So if we're not getting them in our food, if we're not digesting and absorbing our food properly, we can't even get from L-phenylalanine to L-tyrosine, nor can we get from L-tyrosine to L-DOPA, because that conversion, again, requires folate, magnesium, manganese, iron, copper, zinc, and vitamin C. See, they keep appearing here, the same nutrients. L-DOPA to dopamine isn't quite as complex. It requires B6 and zinc. So again, if you have pyroluria, that conversion from L-DOPA to dopamine is not going to happen efficiently and effectively. Dopamine to noradrenaline requires vitamin C, and noradrenaline to adrenaline, or norepinephrine to epinephrine, requires B12, folate, and niacin. So any of these nutrients are limiting factors. And as we all know, we're supposed to be getting them in our food, but if we're not digesting and absorbing our food properly, because we're lacking these nutrients, we're now in a vicious spiral downward. This is why we really do believe in supplementing with a wide range of these cofactor vitamin and mineral nutrients. So just take a moment and really look at these nutrients that are required. And think about the things that can get in the way of utilizing them. Now, if you look at iron here, generally we don't have a problem with not enough iron. If we don't have enough iron, it's because we're either eating really badly or we have some sort of anemia. Most people actually end up with too much iron and possibly too much copper floating around, which can create very severe inflammation which, as we'll see in a couple minutes, dramatically impacts the amount of BH4 tetrahydrobiopterin available for its conversion. So this is all interrelated. Any questions about this so far? Just one.
I just have a question really fast. You know, we talked about pylorrhea a little bit, and I know you said you're going to go into it another day, but can men get pylorrhea?
Absolutely. Anybody can.
Are the symptoms, but the symptoms are going to be different, aren't, I mean, are they? Or
no, they're going to be just the same. What makes you think they might be different, Shelley?
Well, because like when we were talking yesterday, some of the questions that you were talking to my daughter about were more women subjects rather than male subjects. So that was why I was wondering if there was a difference, or if it was as a common.
I haven't seen any statistics, but as far as I know, it's just as common in men as it is in women. And I've probably met more men with pylorrhea than I have women. I don't think that's statistically significant, but it's certainly there.
Okay.
One of the other things I want everybody to notice in this list is how often folate or folic acid is showing up. And where it says folic acid between phenylalanine and tyrosine, that really should be folate, not folic acid. Folic acid, for those of you who don't know, is the synthetic form of folate. And between 40 to 60% of the population has genetic polymorphisms that get in the way of converting the synthetic folic acid into folate and converting folate into its biochemically active forms. So we'll be talking about that in just a minute. So some of these genetic SNPs or polymorphisms that we're becoming more and more familiar with can also dramatically interfere with these pathways. And here we're just looking at the catecholamine pathway. We're not even looking at GABA, serotonin, or the endorphins. Okay, so we're going to spend most of our time today talking about SAMe and tetrahydrobiopterin. SAMe, which I am so not going to try to pronounce anymore, is produced by all living cells. And it's a universal methyl donor in over 100 different reactions. So, what do we mean by methyl donor? This is really the $1,000 question here. And somewhere I have a methylation pathway. So some of you may be very familiar with the methylation pathway, and the rest of you may take one look at this chart and want to run screaming.
I did.
As I did the first time I looked at it. And of course, this is one of the more complex charts of the methylation pathway that we can have. What methylation is a molecular dance in all the tissues and cells in the body by which everything happens. It turns processes on, it turns processes off, it allows genetic expression to occur, it can block genetic expression, it runs enzymes, it does everything. And at its most foundational, what methylation is the passing back and forth of a methyl group, otherwise known as a one carbon molecule. So there's one atom of carbon to 3 atoms of hydrogen. This is a methyl group. And methyl groups get passed back and forth like a dance. million times a second in all of the cells and tissues of our body. So that's it at its most basic. And where do we get methyl groups from? Well, ideally, we get them from folate-filled foods in our diet, especially your dark green leafies. I'm going to simplify this tremendously, partly because it's really complicated and I don't understand it fully, and partly because this is not the time to go into the cycle in great big detail. What I want you all to know is that as a result of this very complex methylation process, some very important things happen. One of the very important things that happen is the production of SAMe. You will see SAMe at the far right. You see these little circles. SAMe is produced at the far right. SAMe is our primary methyl donor, and it makes happen pretty much everything else in this chart. As I said, I'm simplifying things a little bit. Okay, let's go back to SAMe. So, it is produced from ATP, which is our energy source, and the essential amino acid methionine, otherwise known as methionine. I pronounce methionine. It helps to produce and also plays a role in the degradation of the neurotransmitters serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. So we cannot make or break down serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine without SAMe. Does a lot more than that, but this is what we're going to be focusing on today. The other important thing that SAMe does in neurotransmission is it keeps the cell membrane nice and flexible because it produces phosphatidylcholine. Okay, SAMe is required to produce phosphatidylcholine. If we don't have enough SAMe, we don't have enough phosphatidylcholine. If we don't have enough phosphatidylcholine, just like if we don't have enough omega-3 fatty acids, the cell wall is going to be rigid, inflexible, and it's going to get in the way of the cell releasing and receiving the neurotransmitters through the synapse. Okay, because the neurotransmitters are stored at the end of one cell. The vesicle that's stored within the low reservoir is pushed to the edge of the cell wall opens, it's released into the synapse. If there is not enough omega-3 fatty acids and not enough phosphatidylcholine, that's not going to happen efficiently. And on the other side of the synapse, at the receptor sites are not going to function optimally if there's not enough phosphatidylcholine and not enough omega-3 fatty acids in the cell wall. So as it says down here, stiffer cell membranes are not able to transmit cellular signals as effectively, and it's more difficult for neuropeptides and other messenger molecules to fit into receptor sites when cellular membranes are stiff. This isn't something we talk about very often or think about very often, but it's absolutely crucial for neurotransmitters to transmit properly. So methyl donors such as SAMe enhance sleeping, mood, energy, well-being, alertness, and concentration. I'm wanting to mention the liver protection part in this lecture because even though it's not directly related to neurotransmitters, many of us work with recovering alcoholics and recovering addicts. And it's really important to know that SAMe is a tool we can use, or that SAMe is a molecule that protects the liver against alcohol, drugs, and inflammatory chemicals. It protects against bile impairment or blockage, and it may protect against active hepatitis. So we require a lot of SAMe to help our liver operate, function properly whenever we have any toxins, and in this day and age, who doesn't, and inflammation. And this is because SAMe ends up in the process of creating glutathione, and glutathione is our primary antioxidant agent. So without enough SAMe, you're not going to be making enough glutathione. When we get back to that methylation cycle chart, I'll show you that process. It's also neuron protective. It protects against neuronal death caused by lack of oxygen, and it regenerates and provokes remyelination of nerve fibers. So it's a crucial chemical product in the body. There are lots of different causes of deficiency. Genetics, which include polymorphisms in the methylation pathway, but a poor diet, a deficiency in folate from your dark green leafies. Eat your vegetables, children, or vitamin B12 can lead to SAMe deficiency as well. Okay, malabsorption, where we're just getting in the way. We're not digesting and absorbing our nutrients adequately. This is going to include decreased stomach acid. So aging and other conditions can reduce stomach acid and therefore absorption of vitamin B12, which is crucial in the creation of SAMe. However, as we saw before, if we don't have enough B6 and zinc, we're not going to be making enough hydrochloric acid and other digestive enzymes. Smoking can be an issue. Certain medications can all affect levels of vitamin B12 and folate. Toxic exposure, and a number of other conditions such as hypothyroidism, kidney issues, cancer, and pregnancy, because baby's using up your nutrients, and so mom can become deficient. I'm not sure we need to go over this whole slide, but when we don't have enough SAMe, we're not going to be making enough dopamine and norepinephrine. We're not going to be making enough serotonin, which is going to lead to depression, anxiety, fatigue, and insomnia. So there's now lots and lots and lots of information upon the internet about methylation and the methylation cycle. There's as much learning as you want to do on the topic. I'm in the process of diving deep into understanding the genetics within both the detoxification and the methylation pathways. And most of these slides were borrowed from a company called the Methyl-Genetic Research Institute, Dr. Robert Miller. He has free training up on his website, and many of these slides were appropriated from his PowerPoints, and I'm giving him full credit for them. He has a full training program, which I'm finding extremely beneficial. Okay, so how can we find out if our SAMe status and our entire methylation pathway is operating fully? Well, One of the simplest ways to do it, that's been around even before we understood about methylation, is by checking whole blood histamine for histamine levels. And you can do that through DHA labs, direct healthcare access. They do not require a doctor's script. They provide their own doctor. And so you can really order any lab you need from DHA labs, even if you're not a prescriber. So Joan Matthew Larson, in her book 7 Weeks to Sobriety, as well as Depression Free Naturally, Dr. William Walsh in Nutrient Power, etc., talk about how histamine is a marker for over or under methylation. If histamine is high, it is a marker for under methylation, because methylation is required to degrade histamine levels. And if your methylation cycle is not working properly, you're going to end up with too much histamine, which creates all of its own symptoms. Too low histamine is an indication that your methylation is happening too quickly. And that can create a whole list of symptoms itself. So it's a very inexpensive test, and it is a really nice screener. You can also look at the SAM and SAH ratio, because SAMe is broken down into SAH, and if that ratio is off, it's going to tell you what's happening. Doctor's data, and you can order doctor's data for those of you who aren't prescribers. You can order these tests through DHA labs. They have a blood plasma test that measures methionine, SAMe, SAH, homocysteine, and cysteine. So it really tells you how well that part of the cycle is functioning, which is also actually going to give you a lot of information about whether or not you are producing adequate glutathione for your detoxification needs. It has been very useful to order your entire genome raw data through 23andMe. A year ago, however, they changed their database somewhat, and it's making it a little more difficult to utilize them for the information we need. In the past, you could get the raw data from 23andMe and run it through another website called Genetic Genie, which will tell you genetically how well your methylation pathway is working and where the issues are. Very, very useful. This is still possible, but because of the changes, it's not quite as effective. Therefore, Dr. Miller with the Methyl-Genetic Research Institute is in the process of releasing their own genetic test, which is taking a little longer than he was hoping for, but should be ready to go within a month or two. And then you run it through his database for $25 per person. The test itself is going to cost $200, which will include the $25 database computer readout, and it will show you issues within the methylation pathway as well as all of your major detoxification pathways. Very, very fascinating information. When I went to their training a month ago, at least 2/3 of it was over my head, which was really wonderful because it's rare that things are way over my head. So I'm very excited to be learning this information and have found for myself and my family members, as well as many of my clients, that understanding these SNPs can allow us now to bring in supplements to specifically support these pathways that have been blocked and therefore led to chronic physical and emotional illness. Okay, back to this overwhelming chart. if you look down to the bottom right, where you see homocysteine turning into cysteine and then taurine or glutathione. Again, remember that glutathione is our primary detoxification nutrient. And if we don't have enough glutathione, we will be sick and our liver will be very, very unhappy. If you move your eyes to the left, you will see BH4 and how BH4 turns into BH2 and then back into BH4 as it uses up and then regains its methyl groups. Well, you can see here how tyrosine requires BH4 to turn into dopamine. Tryptophan requires it to turn into serotonin. Aluminum blocks this recycling process and can deplete BH4. Therefore leading to all sorts of issues. So, what is BH4? Okay. This is way too complicated. So, tetrahydrobiopterin helps process several amino acids, including phenylalanine. If it is not working correctly, phenylalanine can build up, causing its own symptoms. It's absolutely essential for normal central nervous system functioning. Okay, it's crucial. And it's not really been talked about. So this may be the first time many of you have ever heard of BH4. Not only is it crucial for synthesizing the enzymes, as I said, from tyrosine to dopamine into norepinephrine and epinephrine, and from tryptophan into serotonin and melatonin, it's also crucial for creating all of your different nitric oxide enzymes. And nitric oxide is crucial in the detoxification pathways in the body as well. Now, when BH4 is limited, these enzymes don't work, okay? And so the rate of biopterin formation determines the rate of production of these important neurotransmitters. So chronically low BH4 levels can alter the levels of all these neurotransmitters, disrupting normal brain function and increasing the risk for all of the things we deal with every day. ADD, bipolar, OCD, insomnia, depression, anxiety, and then the substances we use to self-medicate these issues, which then turns into addiction, and which doesn't go away once you get clean and sober. This is why this is important, because once we get clean and sober, these underlying issues are still here and will lead back to relapse if we don't deal with them, and especially with your chronic relapsers. This is why I'm so passionate about teaching this material, because it's the chronic relapsers who pay for our ignorance. Because they're told that the reason they keep relapsing is because they're not motivated enough. They don't care enough. They need to go out and keep experimenting, right? It's all, we shame our chronic relapsers rather than saying, okay, what's really going on? Let's help you find out what's keeping you, what's actually keeping you from staying clean and sober. Because for most people, it is not lack of motivation. For most people, it's the ignorance in the care providers.
Wow.
And this includes those of us who are using amino acids, because, you know, as I teach in my classes, about 80% of the time, amino acids work amazingly well. But then there's that about 20% of the time when they just don't have the robust effect that we're used to having. And these can be the reasons why, because you can have all the amino acids in the world, but if you have defects in your methylation pathway leading to a lack of SAMe and a lack of BH4, those amino acids are not turning into neurotransmitters.
Wow.
And those neurotransmitters are not getting transmitted effectively.
Mm.
So, biopterin is a cofactor to create nitric oxide. It also affects the outcome of the urea cycle, which processes the end products of amino acid breakdown. So, what do I mean by all of this? What I mean by all of this is if we have too much inflammation and if we have too much ammonia floating around, which is the end product of the urea cycle, it's going to use up our biopterin. And if it uses up our biopterin, tetrahydrobiopterin, there's not going to be enough left over for the conversion of our amino acids into neurotransmitters. So we've known for a long time that depression is a causal factor, that inflammation is a causal factor of depression. But it's taken researchers a while to figure out all the moving parts as to how and why inflammation can create depression. Well, this is one of the pieces of that particular puzzle. Because, first of all, if we don't have enough BH4, we're going to, along with other issues in the methylation pathway, we're going to have a buildup of ammonia. Ammonia itself leads to anxiety, brain fog, and depression. But if you have a lot of ammonia because of issues elsewhere in the methylation pathway, you're going to be using up your BH4. So it works both ways. Chronic bacterial and viral infections can lead to excessive ammonia, resulting in higher levels of, requiring higher levels of BH4. Way too much protein in the diet. You know, we're always trying to get you guys to eat enough protein, but some people really do eat way too much. And that creates excessive amounts of ammonia, depleting BH4. CBS mutations, which is in the pathway that creates glutathione, we generate excessive ammonia. That's me, folks. I've had a problem my whole life with body odor. And people have assumed that it's, lack of hygiene. And I've been really frustrated because I know it's not a lack of hygiene, but I've never had another explanation for it until I ran my genes and realized that I have problems in the CBS pathway and I generate excess ammonia. And I've now started taking a little bit of these products to support that pathway, and it's been really, really helpful. So we also know that chronic inflammation from all sorts of things may play a role in issues with nitric oxide. I'm not going to go into the issues because it's really complicated, but it results in increased oxidative damage. And the more oxidative damage we have, the more BH4 we're using up, and the less available we have for neurotransmitter production. Other consequences of low BH4 lead to low serotonin and low GABA. Okay. We're also going to have, when we have more free radicals, because again, we've used up our BH4, we're going to have microglial activation. And so we're going to have an out of control inflammatory cascade, both in the brain and in the body. This is going to lead to excess glutamate production. And excess glutamate leads to mania, migraines, anxiety, agitation, seizures, and ultimately neuronal death. Okay, so the final thing I want to say of low BH4 is it's involved in the production of CoQ10, and we require CoQ10 for all sorts of things as well. Now, you move on here. Some of the things, again, that can cause low BH4 are mutations in the methylation pathway, low folate, and this is an interesting one, the A1298C mutation in the MTHFR enzyme. So when people talk about, MTHFR genetic SNPs, they're usually talking about I think it's the 6771. We forget about the 1298 mutation. Well, the 1298 mutation is crucial for recycling BH2 back to BH4. So if you've started getting your genetic test done and all you've had done is the MTHFR 677 SNP, you're missing all of this really, really important information as to other things that could be going wrong. Okay? Just to go back here,
Christina?
as I said, yes.
I'm just giving you a heads up. We're about 1:45, so.
Okay, so I'm just going to take 5 minutes to talk about pyroluria.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Methylnutrition training. These are the 2 PowerPoints that I pulled a lot of this information from. Okay, pyroluria. I know that many of you are familiar with this, and some of you not so much. It's found in at least 40 to 60% of alcoholics, according to some surveys that have been done. We know it's implicated in all of your central nervous system disorders. ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenia, major depression, autism spectrum disorders, etc. The psychiatric symptoms from pyroluria include high anxiety and poor stress tolerance, the inability to deal with things effectively, and severe social anxiety starting from very, very young. And this severe social anxiety therefore leads to lifetime increasing isolation, depression, fatigue, mood swings, and often angry and violent outbursts. So what is pyroluria? Well, it is a genetic disorder that generally, it can be non-genetic, but generally it's a genetic disorder leading to an increase in a waste product in the body called cryptopyrrole. Cryptopyrroles are created in the metabolism of heme. Heme is, the oxygen carrying portion of hemoglobin. When you have too many cryptopyrroles for the body to excrete in the urine in an ongoing, easy way, they build up. Well, cryptopyrroles bind to zinc and B6 and excrete them from the body, leading to a progressive and profound depletion in zinc and B6. And you've already seen some of the very crucial ways that zinc and B6 are required in neurotransmitter production. Then if zinc is low, copper can become toxic. So I often start suspecting pyroluria in my clients sort of two ways. If they come in and they tell me they have a family history of social anxiety and stuff, you know, addictive stuff, mental illness stuff, violent stuff, and they report severe anxiety and social anxiety from an extremely young age, say kindergarten, school phobia, you know, that sort of thing. I'm going to start thinking about pyroluria. If they have little white spots on their fingernails, which is a sign of zinc deficiency. If they have trouble digesting protein, zinc and B6 are required for hydrochloric acid production. If you don't have enough hydrochloric acid production when you eat protein, you're not going to feel very well. Your tummy is going to hurt. Maybe you're going to have heartburn. Maybe you're just going to have gas and bloating, but you're going to say, oh, I don't like meat. And then we become a vegetarian or a vegan, where you're now getting even less amino acid precursors, okay? But if we're giving somebody amino acids, because this is where I pretty much teach everybody to begin, and the amino acids aren't working, or you're getting a pretty high rate of adverse reactions, we know that sometimes, you know, 5-HTP can make everybody a little sick to their tummy, especially if there's too much B6 running around. But it doesn't happen that often. But if people really can't tolerate your amino acids, then, or any of them, this is another sign that pyroluria might be operating. So how do we diagnose it? We first use a questionnaire. There's lots of questionnaires on the web, on the internet. I really like Trudy Scott's website, but there are others as well. And you can use the questionnaire to determine if urine testing is needed. Please remember, however, that many people underreport on the questionnaire. So you're going to have to use your own clinical judgment as to whether or not you're going to order a urine test, even if they're scoring low on the questionnaire. But it is a good place to start. And if people score pretty high on it, you want to order a urine test to determine the level of cryptopyrroles in the urine. My favorite lab is Direct Healthcare Access. You see that at the bottom of the slide, dhalabs.com, otherwise known as pyroluriatesting.com. They have two tests that I really like for pyroluria. One is just their cryptopyrrole test for about $85. It's a urine test. You do it at home. All you do is collect your morning urine, and they test to see how many cryptopyrroles are in it. Very straightforward. The other test that they offer is called metabolic panel. Now that's an unfortunate name because it confuses conventional doctors, because in conventional medicine there's something called the metabolic panel, which tests your glucose and your cholesterol and your other, you know, regular medical markers. It does not test for cryptopyrroles. But DHA's basic metabolic panel, it includes the cryptopyrrole test and a whole blood histamine test for your methylation status, and zinc and copper.
Nice.
It's around more or less $240 and is an extremely useful test. It's a combination of the urine test for the cryptopyrroles and a blood test for the other nutrients. Treatment, lots of treatment protocols out there, but basically you want to rebuild your B6 and your zinc stores. Now you may want to bring in other nutrients as well, magnesium, GLA, manganese, etc. But the key here is rebuilding your B6 and your zinc stores and keeping them happy.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Christina. Oh, wow. Wow. There we all are. Hey. That's nice. Thank you, Christina. That was amazing. A little over my head as well, but very helpful to have that information. So I really appreciate that. And I want to open it up with our last few minutes for questions. I know somebody sent in a chat, but I wasn't sure if I could open that and keep the screen. So I'm going to just open it up. I'm going to unmute everybody. Okay, so everybody's unmuted. Anyone that would like to ask a question with Christina while she's still on here?
Christina, it's Alan.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Alan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. I'm here with Gina. Should we be looking at supplementing then BH4 and SAMe with the amino acid therapy?
So, yes and no. This is, if you've determined that there is issue with low SAMe, then definitely you can support it. You can buy it from the store. You have to be careful about who you buy it from because it's not always stable. The company Professional Health Products that's associated with Dr. Robert Miller has a stable form of SAMe, as does Source Naturals. There may be some others as well, but those are the two I'm most familiar with. You can start with 200 milligrams a day all the way up to 1,600 milligrams a day. And that can be very, very useful to do, especially because SAMe runs so many things in the body. However, you also want to be supporting, not just depending upon supplemental SAMe. You want to be making sure that you're getting enough folate in through your dark green leafies, that you're decreasing inflammation wherever it is in the body, that you're supporting the whole entire pathway and not just depending upon supplementing with SAMe.
Okay.
Wow.
And in terms of BH4, in this country, you cannot get it. You can get it in Europe, you cannot get it here. However, again, Professional Health Products has a product to support the biopterin pathways, not to directly introduce biopterin, but to make it more likely that the body will be effectively making its own. And that's really what our whole point here is.
Right.
And again, to help the body utilize biopterin for neurotransmitter production, you want to lower inflammation.
Right.
So it's funny how it's all coming back to lowering inflammation and lowering toxicity and keeping the toxins out of our environment as much as we possibly can.
Nice.
Yay. Thank you.
Yay. Thank
Welcome.
you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Christina, I've got a couple on when you said that they can get stomach aches on the aminos.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be the pyroluria then that we need to get taken care of? Or is that?
We don't know. It's definitely a marker. It's one of the things that indicate that you may want to look at pyroluria and see if there are other pyroluric indicators there. In your case, with your family member, there were a lot of pyroluria indicators.
Right. So then before, because we're going to get the tests, can we start rebuilding them before, or should we just, wait until we get the test? Because right now there's a lot of frustration going on.
That's a tricky question with a pros and cons answer. Probably, yes, I would start bringing in the supplements for pyroluria immediately, but be aware that as soon as you start doing that, you're going to throw off the pyroluria test.
Okay, so wait at least till we take the test.
Yes, and then the moment you have that little urine cup, you can start, dispensing the zinc and the B6 and the other nutrients.
And how much would you do?
That's a different discussion, Shelley.
Okay.
We can talk about that later, yeah.
And then my other question is, I had a client who had given it to their son because their son was, he's been in so much trouble and he's been kicked out of school, and so he's got like ADHD, and I don't know. it was kind of through the pathway where I gave the grandparents the aminos and they turned around and gave them to the grandson. So I haven't talked to that. I mean, this is coming from hearsay, but they said that they gave him the tryptophan at nighttime and it did an opposite reaction, that he was up like climbing the walls.
That happens sometimes. He may be one of, if you say he has ADHD, he may be one of those lovely rare people who can go to sleep on tyrosine.
Huh.
And coffee.
And coffee, exactly.
Okay, and coffee.
Okay.
Sounds like we've got some. Thank you, Shelley. Does that help? Does that answer? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Anybody else? We have 1 more minute, or 2 more minutes. If anyone else has a burning desire to ask Christina a question. No? Okay. Okay, great. Well, I want to thank everybody for being on the call. If you are not a member of the Alliance, please join us and you can get the replays to this call, to Julia's call, and to any of the other calls. We open this up to the public, but any replays, please be sure to join our membership and you'll get the replays to all the upcoming calls as well too. We appreciate all of you who support the Alliance and are members of the Alliance. It really helps us pay for some things and take care of our business that we need to take care of. So again, thank you for joining us. Our next call will be at the end of May and we'll let you know as soon as we get our speaker lined up. Thank you so much for joining, and Christina Veselek, thank you so much for all the work you're doing for humanity.
And
hey, Patty, are you guys going to send this out to us? This
yes. Yes. It will be available on the Alliance website for members.
Okay.
Christina?
With that,
and again,
hold on.
I just want to say one thing.
Okay.
We just want to remind everybody that we're putting on a live training in Florida in 2.5 weeks. So if you know of friends, colleagues, family members, or you yourself who would benefit from this information, please do join us in Florida. We're really excited. We're going to have Dr. Kenneth Blum joining us. He, of course, is the discoverer of reward deficiency syndrome. And he's going to be talking about the genetic test that he has developed to identify people who are susceptible for specific addiction down the road.
Right.
Very exciting information.
Yeah. That's in West Palm Beach, May 9th through the 12th. And you can find out more information on the Alliance site, but also on the Academy site. And please, if you know anyone in Florida that can show up, pass the word on. We're excited to be in person with everybody as well. Again, thank you so much for joining the Alliance and our call with Christina Veselek, the amino acid lady, plus more. Thanks again. Bye, everybody.